For all of my pieces, I have a couple of different pieces in here that I can go around and talk about. But mostly my pieces deal with like family relationships, romantic relationships, and then different aspects of symbolism that I find in community with emphasis on the Black community. So for this piece, I kind of want to represent like a flamboyant part of the community that you see. So like mostly like in the hip hop culture that has dwindled down to like more a community aspect or like a smaller aspect of Black community. So I want to talk about grillz, and then I have like earrings here, like gold earrings. So for this, I just want to symbolize like different influences that have impacted me as I have grown up, and different influences that I've seen. So like when I was a little girl, I can remember like everyone wanted a grill. We would always put like the little silver gun rubbers in our teeth just to like have that. So that's what I was kind of thinking about while I was in the studio. And then this these two pieces, everything usually starts smaller in my sketchbook and then I blew it up. And then I thought it'd be interesting to play with the idea of like being an only child or like having conversations that I typically have with just myself. So I want to reflect just me having a conversation with myself and having these different symbolic influences that I have, or like even with clothing or different hairstyles. That's typically what I try to put into my work. And then with the clothing, I try to emphasize specifically with this like baggy clothing that you can see, mostly like in the hip hop influence. Or this one is like more of a cutesy like influence that you can see that I find that have come from more childhood things, but you can see like with more like girlhood or like adulthood that they still have these influences, like cutesy influences on clothing. And then I'm always wearing these like sandals or slides, and I find that that's mostly like for people in the Black community or people who are like part of the culture, if I want to use that word and term. So that's kind of what this piece is about, just a different reflection of things. And then I can move on, or I can just, I can go around.
Yeah, I'll go around.
You guys can have questions?
Yes, yes, that's good.
So for this piece is more like just about me, like a personal, well, all of them are kind of personal, but these couple next pieces are about like romantic relationships. So for this piece, I wanted to bring in like a sculptural influence or like embroidery influence with fabric, just so I can have tangibility to the work, because I like to bring things or mix media with like the 2D and the 3D. So for this one, I was just thinking about like food and how food can be an influence of romantic relationships or just in relationship in general. And then for these ones, they're more like healthy relationships. So I was thinking about healthy foods like fruits. So that's why it's like an apple with a face in it. And then for the title, it kind of can reference to like having just this little bag of fruit that you can carry around with you, kind of using the fruit as a like metaphor of like this person that's in your life that you can carry around that's healthy for you. And then for this piece, this is just another take on relationships, and then like kind of like the reflection element that I have here. But this one I want to talk about like the disintegration of relationships. So I added the holes and this little like flower pattern that you can see in like soft fabrics. So like the holes kind of represent the disintegration, and then the reflection of like looking at something that's not there. You kind of like just looking at your hand, reflecting on these memories that you had with this person and such and so on. And then I just wanted to add another factor of like ribbons and hair, which is another thing that I add into my work to reflect community or like the Black community, because that's something that's held at a high standard or that's kind of important, and that's something that's always influenced my life, if I will always influence my life as I go along. And then for these two pieces, like the relationship without necessarily focusing on like ignorance, because I think that's kind of a big focus of mine, so I was trying to get out of that zone. So I wanted to, I was like in a store, I was in the mall, and I saw this jacket. And I took a picture of it because it reminded me of this person that I had a past relationship with. So, clothing, I also want to represent like clothing as an influence in relationships, as I did with the fruit in that piece. So, as a printmaker, I was just thinking about different ways that I could represent this clothing piece. So, I wanted to maintain like the tangibility of the real jacket that you can see, but I want to play around with something more intimate, kind of like a pillow form or something you can see like a clothing rack that's in a domestic setting or a house setting. So I screen printed on the front of the jacket, and then I did like punch needle and embroidery on the back, which I think helps emphasize like the tangibility of it, the softness of it. And then the ribbons again as another influence or symbolism. Different other pieces that you can see. And the jacket was like, this was the original color of the jacket, so I kind of wanted to remain true to what I saw. Like again, like capturing moments, as John said. He did his work, I was kind of capturing this moment as I kind of do. So that's kind of what this piece is about. And then for this piece, I was playing around with family memories. So I had this image. This image was a family photograph that I found that I redrew of myself in front of my house in this Texas. I'm in this Texas. It's about 2 hours away from here. So I had this image that I drew, and then I didn't have it. As everyone does, I started to sketch it, and I didn't have anything that tangibly up for it. And so I got these studios, started thinking out the materials. So one thing that I noticed when I got here to love it, when I was trying to find a house, I noticed that there weren't a lot of screen house or apartment, I should work. I noticed that there weren't a lot of screen doors, like in the terrace area, and it kind of reminded me of like domestic settings of some areas, like maybe low income areas that you might want to have protection, or you might want to have, or that I saw in my neighborhood, which is in Northwest Texas, which is predominantly black and brown, and mostly everyone has screen doors, so you just open your screen door and like let the sunlight in, or it's just a nice buffer instead of just having like an enclosed space. So I was just thinking about that, and I was just thinking about like how like that's the first thing I asked like my landlords when I put the screen door in, because it was like I just felt enclosed. So I was just thinking about that, and then I was thinking about like family ties of how you can kind of see your kids through the screen door, like through the mesh to make sure that they're safe. So I wanted to add that aspect to it, and then have the living structure to like stabilize everything to represent that stability or like as for students. And then I have it like a jar just so you can see like a little bit inside, but in the house you're not really supposed to see. You don't really know what goes on in the house exactly. Like you might can see a little bit, or you might know a little bit about this person, but you don't know too much. So that's kind of, I feel like it's a representation of someone where there's somewhere. It's like, you know, a little bit, you don't know too much, just a lot. And then again, just with the hanging around with the ribbons to represent like hairstyles or different aspects of hair that you can see and such and so on. And I think that's it about the general idea about my work.
Questions? I don't know. I can't. My brain's not. Questions or any comments about their work?
Questions. You have a lot of dualities going on in your work, starting from the drawing, graphite drawing, there are almost identical figures sitting next to each other. There's that similarities. Other pieces have certain duality that are very different from each other. The one side over the other, it's different time or different memory or your reflection on them. And those two are different stage groups. So one is lighter, the other is darker. So certain degrees of differences or similarities, and how do you go about it? What is the duality in your work?
So like, why do I have it, or how do
Or
I?
how do you process this?
Oh, how do I plan if I'm gonna have two things?
Right, and you can add a reasoning why
Okay.
you're gonna go further.
So it depends on like what I'm working on. Sometimes it's not planned. So those two pieces are there. As I started on the sketch, it was just gonna be a small like extrusion or a small window. But then as I like sat with it a little bit, then I thought it would be cool to reflect it because I was kind of I usually do like single figure work, so I was thinking about how I could add more figures in it to represent the similar idea, but like add a different aspect to it, something that I'm trying to play with. So that's kind of how that one came about. I just flipped it smaller, and then I went to create scale, so I like made it bigger, and then I added the influence of as I was working on it, I added the influence of grillz and like jewelry ornaments, because that's kind of I hadn't played with that in my undergrad at all until like this period to bring in kind of like the community and to show something that like might not typically be seen in the other aspect, just to give it light to those that community and where it come from, that expect those things and such and so on. And then this piece, again, it was just going to be like I just was going to screen print both sides, but then I wanted to add the influence of embroidery because I thought that would be like I had always wanted to play with that, so that's kind of how like, the two pieces came together, so I could have stuff that's off the wall. And then this piece was like my 2-stage proofs. I thought this was going to be bigger than it was, but it wasn't. And then I kind of like my look, so I figured that I could like have my stage proof and then my final one here to represent like the passage of time and such and so on. I don't know if that changed.
That answered quite a bit. I still want to know why you have that mirrored version.
Oh, so this one, it was mostly like to represent how I'm in competition with myself. I'm also the only child, so like I just grew up just me.
As an only child, you
Yeah.
talk to yourself. So
Yes,
it's like watching mirror having a conversation.
Yes, or like kind of like when you talk to a little voice in your head, and you're like, should I do this? Should I do that? Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
I think it's really interesting to talk about relationships in your work, and you're seeing that between like materials, but then also like within the image and the concepts that you're bringing into it all. Like that, I'm getting that, and I also am noticing that like this is mirrored, and it's like almost in conversation with yourself, and it's more posed, like you're sitting on a stool, like aware that it's like I don't do two things, some 2D things. So maybe there's like a better way to phrase that, but like there is like a posed nature to this, whereas this is more of like a captured moment. And then in this one over here, it's so like personal and intimate with just you, kind of like hanging out with you. And so thinking about like one being posed, one being a moment, and then the other kind of being this like glimpse that you're giving the viewer into like an intimate, private setting of yourself. Like I'm wondering if there's like, do you think about that when dealing with figures, and is there one that is more vulnerable for you to show than another? Did that make sense? Question wise? With the question mark at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that the moments that are mostly family related are like, I think when people get a big idea, like that percentage that's more they used to show. Then I think the ones that are talking about like romantic relationships, those are the ones that are like,
Yeah.
you know? So I guess there is like a moment of like some pieces I'm like, okay, well, like I'll have to explain. I might have to explain this piece a little bit more. You might not understand just from this this or this, and that's okay. But I think there's always like an aspect of like the door, like letting people in a little bit for guests, and then like, yeah, you need to leave something, or go to your own house, because this is not really to stay. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I love that. I think that really translates in your work and like how you're doing that with the bag and the screen door, like killing it very much.
Can you talk about scale a little bit? I'm interested in, and honestly, there's a scale distortion in this piece that I'm really interested in. The door frame, the screen door, is probably the thing that's the most kind of given in terms of scale. That is more or less literally the size of door frames, thresholds in our lives. But like the jacket is smaller, the apples are big, but the bag is the size that it is. Can you talk about how you work sort of the familiar, I guess, in terms of the scale of the world that you live in and the world that you create in your business?
So I guess like with that piece, I kind of wanted to, since I was representing something that's more like flamboyant and like showy, or like showing successes, I wanted to make sure it was like big in the gallery space or in whatever space that is kind of being put in. And then the ones that are kind of like more romantic nature, I kind of wanted them to have like a smaller essence. The paper one was like by default, but the apples and then like the jacket, this was like a smaller jacket when I saw it in the store. And then the apple was kind of like something where like they just hold on to, like you can carry it around with you, just like in a more like intimate nature. I don't know exactly answering your question, but that's kind of how I planned out Contextualizing.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Hi, Faith. Thank you for sharing your work and talking about it. I think it's incredible. I had a question between the screen work piece, the bag piece, and then the one next to it. I'm kind of finding a theme of like looking through things. And you were talking about relationships earlier. I was wondering what you're thinking about in terms of like this idea of like looking through this artwork and how that relates to your concept.
Yes, okay. Thank you for all of us. So I think I'm interested in like the mesh idea, specifically for screen door, because like screen doors are typically like mesh, so you can see the outside. So like since I was representing like a childhood figure, or like myself as a child, I wanted to represent or have the influence of like looking at your kid through the screen door, so you can make sure they're safe, like as a protection influence as well. And then for that one, I just wanted to show like a bag that I felt like a regular bag would be too like hidden to represent what I wanted to do with the apples. So I did want to have like another mesh influence so you can really like see through just a little bit. It's kind of like if you look at it, it's kind of hazy. It's kind of like you don't know exactly what's going on unless you get closer and you kind of like look at the detail and such. So I just think the mesh is always an interesting like way if you want something that's obstructive, but you want it to be seen at the same time. Like to represent the reality of romantic relationships with such.
Thank you.
And why did you choose apples?
Apples, I think apples is just, because I was playing around with titles, so I wanted to call it Apple of My Eye, because that's another like romantic influence. That's kind of like a more on the nose one. So I think that's what I was playing with when I was doing like the figure specifically for that. It could have been any other oranges or like cherries or anything like that. But yeah, once we apples. Just for that. Yes.
I just wanted to comment, I'm not sure I'm ready for the question, but I really see a distinct difference between the image that's a drawing or representation of a photograph, and the ones that feel more like they're metaphorical, like they're kind of, like they're imaginative, they're more like, I feel like there's more, maybe more story here, and these feel a little more like they're, like you're showing me a snapshot of your child. Yeah, I can feel the difference when I look at them, and I just wonder if you've thought about the relationship between using images that are pictures from the past and images that you're imagining of yourself. How do you think about those in relationship to each other? Because they feel really different to me. I don't really know what to say about them. I'm just.
That's a good question. So I feel like for these images, since I want to be like true to like my own personal experiences, like this is just my childhood. For the family relationship one, familial relationships, this is like a true nature, so I want to stick to that one for these. I want to represent them as accurate as I can. I know it won't look exactly how I did. I might have some influence with these ones. Like different influences that I put in that's not in the photograph. And then for these ones, I'm not sure about that. But for these ones, since I just wanted anyone to look at it and see like, okay, I can see myself in these ones. I know that they can see it for this as well, but these ones are more vague because it's like myself in a way, or like what I understand or from these just experiences in general, but I don't really put too much emphasis on if it's seen as being in this photo or like this jacket. So that's why it's been like just a jacket that was just kind of vague, you can see the face, and then the outfits of the guy is just kind of like vague. That makes sense. Because anybody, I don't put too much emphasis on if anybody sees this. But this is not the go. It's just my own. This is my childhood.
Picking up on the duality question, and a lot of these questions I think have surrounded this, but I want to hear a little bit more about the duality between image and object. Everything from subtle things like putting a piece of paper up on the wall with magnets, gently rounding the corners and letting that piece come off. It's more obvious maybe one's in the bag and one's to either side of you. But why is it, do your images need to be objects? Do you just want to do it? Where is it?
So that's a good question. So, I don't think some of them necessarily need to be objects, since it's kind of like a spontaneous moment. I think that these lithographs could live as lithographs, but since I'm always like trying to test the boundaries or test materials, so I think that the like, structural parts or the object part will always just be part of it in general, so that I can just have another factor of tangibility to occur.
And so thinking of boundaries and tangibility to your left is this sort of generic contemporary clothes rack of some sort that's very foul. But then you built this, like you could have gone and found something like that and talk about why each thing maybe needed some.
I knew this question was good.
Well, you should be prepared then.
So specifically for these two pieces, like I like to work with wood because I like to like feel like I had a factor in building it. And then for this piece, it was like a spur of the moment studio decision, like for critique. So like I could go back, or I have been thinking about going back to this one and see, like if I wanted to build a rack for this one, and then I'm also thinking about the idea of like where I saw the image of this jacket, because I saw it in a store with like a regular metal photo rack in it. So I've been playing with those two ideas of like, do I keep it like this, or do I want to make it more structures and such?
I think that's a good thing to know, and we can talk about it, but in the way Jonathan was talking about bringing like the outside in a way, you're bringing in like another part of the world into the gallery space, and it reads oddly different. Like we said, we look at it as kind of like an aesthetic thing. On this one, though, I wanted to comment in a gentle way that you talked about, you talked about stability, but I see it as precarity, really. It's like you could have gotten something that was more built with mortise and tins and the kind of traditional way that gives it strength, but it feels improvised to me. But I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all, because I really think it works. It maybe gets to where you were headed, but from kind of the other direction. Right? Like I think about safety and children and how sometimes we think of them as being in a precarious stage. Right? So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good. I didn't think about like the